What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Vanguard. How's it going, Zach?
Dude, it's going really, really well actually. Today was a fucking gorgeous morning. Got out, listened to some good tunes. Spun Norman fucking Rockwell, which I know is a record you really like, but it was just such a vibe for it this morning. Drinking my coffee, just kind of like listening, vibing, chilling, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, great way to start the day. Was super excited to do the show.
Hell yeah, sounds like an awesome morning. Really excited to be live today. We have a huge, really special announcement we're going to be making a little bit later in the show. So everyone make sure to sit tight and stick around for that. We're going to be announcing a debate actually that's happening tomorrow around this time tomorrow. 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, we will be debating. Well, you're going to have to wait and find out because we'll announce a little bit later in the show, but we're super excited. This isn't just a small time debate. This is one that's been in the works for a long time, one that's, been a long time coming. So we're really excited to announce that and hear your guys' reaction. But yeah, is there anything you wanted to start with today, Zach? Anything you wanted to chat about?
I was about to start plowing into this time tomorrow, but the moment kind of passed. No, I think we could go ahead and kickstart with let's talk. You want to talk a little bit about the new Breaking Points news? I think that people in our audience are going to be, at least hotly opinionated on this new development over at the Breaking Points network. One of the things that we've been speculating about since really the inception of Breaking Points. I feel like, Gavin, we've been covering this literally since the moment they left the Hill, on to now. And one of the things we've been talking about is, given the, audience that they've been able to accumulate, the amount of support that they've been able to, establish and find, if they were going to expand beyond the, semi-regular projects or contributions from guys like Maximilian Alvarez over at Real News Network or Jordan Sheraton over at Status Quo. And if they were going to try and branch out into almost like a new TYT style model of independent journalism, right, where they have multiple new shows under one umbrella network. And it seems like that's kind of what's occurred. Were you at all surprised to see them announce counterpoints with Ryan Grimm and Emily Jasinski?
Yeah, not going to lie, I was taken a little bit by surprise to see this announcement. I'll throw it up on screen. Here's Sagar's tweet. They also announced on the show. We'll play the clip. But yeah, Sagar says here, announcement, Emily Jasinski and Ryan Grimm are joining Breaking Points for an exclusive Friday show. Counterpoints Friday debuts on September 16th. Join us to get the show early and all that stuff. So basically, they've poached two more talents from the Hill. Sagar, or rather Ryan Grimm and Emily Jasinski. They did a lot of the work to kind of rebuild the Hills Rising after Sagar and after Crystal left. Despite the fact that their commentary is not necessarily my very favorite ever, I still think that the Hill must be absolutely seething about this, seeing two more of their, top talents, top hosts poached by Breaking Points. So it's definitely interesting. Do you think that the Breaking Points audience is going to, be really into this new show or not so much, Zach?
It's actually, I think it'll be interesting to see, actually. I don't want to go in one way or another too hot and heavy. Obviously, we've had Ryan on our show a lot of times. We've, chatted with him a bunch. I think he's got a lot of really good insights. I've never bitten my tongue when it comes to the fact that, I think he could be a little more lively when he's on air, but I think he's actually gotten a lot better as an on-air host over his tenure at Rising. And I do think it's hilarious that they were like, fuck you guys at the Hill. Like, we're taking your other two top people. You got rid of Kim Iverson. Have fun, over there. Like, I just think it's interesting. And, do I think that their audience will get? I actually don't know what the analytics and the breakdown of the Breaking Points audience is enough to really, take a stab at that. Obviously, the Jimmy Dore sycophant crowd is going to just be up in arms at anything that Ryan Grimm does. So, they're going to, kind of count this one out. And I don't know what kind of audience Emily Jasinski brings. I know she writes for the Federalist, and that's kind of her main job. And I don't think that she makes very compelling points in her arguments. I think that Ryan really handedly, when he decides to, can kind of wash away with whatever kind of nonsense that she's spouting. I think she identifies as like a true conservative. So she's like a Tea Party kind of conservative, which I just think is batshit crazy. But, all ideas are welcome on the table. So I guess in that sense, maybe it'll be interesting to watch some good debates. There have been clips of Ryan and Emily Jasinski that have done well in the past, but I don't see it being like a fucking breakout success, right? Like, Rising it's so hard to have the chemistry that Crystal and Sagar have, the unique relevance of their points of view from both the left and the right, all these kinds of things. To be honest, and no shade to Ryan, he does have more of an establishment progressive kind of an analysis of this in a way that Crystal Ball has a slightly more outsider renegade perspective on these kinds of deals. And obviously I think that's, kind of to be expected. Ryan Grimm is a guy that follows the ins and outs of the policy wonkery, probably better than almost anybody from the progressive perspective. He's very much in the Hill system and all that. And then whereas Crystal and Sagar kind of operate on the outside, I would imagine the case is similar for Emily Jasinski. Again, not massively familiar with her work. I can't even remember what it was about, but I did find one of her articles in the Federalist paper at the past. I just couldn't take it seriously. So I don't know. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm sure she's a smart lady, but like her political analysis to me is just like so off base that I mean,
yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I also agree with what you said about Ryan. Ryan's a friend of the show and no hard feelings, obviously. I have a lot of respect for the guy's actual reporting. But you're right. He's not as much of like a populist kind of commentator that someone like Crystal Ball is, for example. And obviously the same thing goes for Emily Jasinski. She's much more of just like a normie conservative than someone like Sagar. So, if I do have one criticism of this announcement, it's like, they kind of seem to be moving a little bit further away with it from the populist idea of the whole show, which is kind of, the populist left and the populist right. Ryan, is a progressive for sure. And Emily's, like you said, just basically a true con. So I don't necessarily think they're bringing viewpoints to the show that are all that out of the mainstream, nothing particularly radical or anything like that. And that's fine. That's fine. I understand that Breaking Points also wants to reach that kind of normie demographic of people that might normally watch cable news, but find, this alternative independent outlet, which kind of replicates some of the same vibes, but with different perspectives. So I definitely understand, the reasoning behind this. And I did enjoy always watching Crystal and Sagar interact with Ryan and Emily when they were back at the Hill. I always just saw them as better, additions to the panel rather than hosts of their own show. I like to see them interact with Crystal and Sagar a lot, but I'm admittedly a little bit less interested in just watching the two of them talk to each other for an hour. Like I said, I like Ryan Grimm. I think he's, a lot of his reporting is really great. But I almost, like it more when he gets brought in to talk about that reporting, not just to kind of give his opinions on anything and everything, if that makes sense. Again, not that I even disagree with him all that much. I just don't think he's the most dynamic commentator of all time. Again, no hard feelings. That's just how I feel. But with that being said, there is no denying that this is a huge score for Breaking Points as a network. Ryan Grimm's is a very established, reputable journalist, and Emily Jasinski has definitely made a name for herself since hosting The Hill. So, it's definitely big news. It's definitely good news for them. Am I going to be, thrilled to watch the first episode of Counterpoints? Not necessarily, but I'm sure I'll catch it from time to time.
Yeah, and I think that we have to be honest and say that the exact demographic that Gavin and I represent, I think, is the opposite of the demographic that they're trying to reach with a show like this. And I think that this is a concerted effort for them to do just what you said, Gavin, to kind of expand their audience and their reach as a network, because people tell us all the time, they're like, hey, could you guys not swear as much on air or something, because I want to show my parents this content and they're not going to like it if you swear. And I'm like, I will not ever stop swearing on this show, unfortunately, but there is going to be more and more independent content for people like your parents or grandparents or whomever it is that just can't get over the fact that Gavin and I swear like swashbuckling sailors. It is what it is, right? That's just who we are. We can't front and pretend we're somebody else. To be fair, who Ryan is a much more one, he's a legitimate journalist, right? He's not just a loudmouth piece of shit on the internet like me. So he has a reputation that I think he's trying to uphold when he's up there. He wants to present himself a little more formally, all those kinds of things. And I think that people would be more interested in that and taking it seriously if they were less the Gen Z millennial content consumers. We kind of like the brashness, the more authentic, the less polished kind of approach to our news consumption and our entertainment writ large. But for people who if you're trying to reach somebody, let's say with similar politics to like my mom or like Gavin to like your grandpa or something like that, they're never going to get their news and take it seriously if it comes in the package that we're in. But I could totally see my mom or potentially like your grandpa, if they sat down and watched like Ryan and Emily talk about something and debate the pros and cons of like spending on infrastructure or like spending on public schools and all those kinds of things. So I think it just expands the audience that people are going to be looking for online. And instead of letting those audiences get poached by the just downright terrible content at CNN and MSNBC and that kind of thing, at least you'll have people like Ryan who is going to make an infinitely better case than, I mean, I don't freaking even Morning Joe. I always forget like who the fuck is still on air after they fired everybody after the numbers 8 shit. I was about to say Maddow. Maddow's gone. You know what I mean? A lot of people are gone anyway. But either way, you're going to get much better than that, or like Don Lemon or something like that. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. Obviously, way better than anyone in corporate media. Let's take a look here at some of the reactions just from, people on Twitter. So take it with a grain of salt. Obviously, a lot of crazy people on Twitter. But here's someone that says, as someone to the left of Sanders, I can say that I rarely agree with Emily's positions, but what I respect about her is that she presents logical arguments, no BS. There's one reaction. This is another one. This person says, why though? This sucks. Would have been great to see Bad Faith Fridays with Brianna Joy Gray or something with Kim Iverson. I have been skipping Ryan and Emily's Hill segments because they are boring. Brianna Joy Gray is the next level. And I am interested, now that they've poached Ryan and Emily from the Hill, are Robbie and Brianna next? Because a lot of people have kind of noted that, clearly Ryan and Emily developed a relationship and a rapport of their own. And the same could be said about Brianna and Robbie. Again, I disagree with just about every goddamn thing that comes out of Robbie's mouth, but there's no denying that those two have a good kind of rapport. They have a good dialogue. It's always fun to watch them bounce off of each other. So that would really take Breaking Points to the next level, I think, if they were able to poach even more hosts from the Hill in the form of Brianna and Robbie. Do you think there's any potential that that's coming down the pipeline, Zach?
I honestly, it's tough to speculate, right? Because I don't know how much they're paying Ryan and Emily. I don't know what their finances look like. I know they're looking for a producer right now, so that's going to take a chunk out of. Not that they're like financially hurting, but they're running a business, right? Like to the extent that a much smaller business. But Gavin and I are running a bit like we can't spend more than we can afford to on things, right? And they have a much higher overhead, as we were alluding to. They have a fucking studio in Washington D.C. They have a fucking staff that's small but still has to be paid. I imagine they're giving people health insurance benefits, things like that. This is all really adds up as a company. So while it looks like they're bringing in an enormous amount of money, I don't know what it costs them to onboard 2 new people down the road. If this is massively successful, I think that's of course what they would want to do. And again, this person, the Tea Party's daughter, again represents that exact kind of audience that is more akin to what we would be looking for, like somebody like Brianna Joy Gray. Or I don't agree with Kim Iverson a lot, but I know she wrangles up a lot of the demographics that are like similar to that, people who are already really habitually online. So I wouldn't be surprised if they double down on that later, but I do think it is on one hand smart to try and branch out and say, okay, well, we know these people are already going to be online, we're going to catch them on our viral videos anyway. Let's see if we can't tap into a lot of YouTubers who are, maybe they get on YouTube to like watch one specific show about the news or whatever, and then now Breaking Points is going to be presented to them, or Counterpoints is going to be presented to them as like another option, and bringing those people in as opposed to just fighting over the same group of people who already want a very specific kind of content.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Fair to point out. Here's some more reactions. We can just look through the quote tweets. Lame additions. Example of the network effects of talent and purpose. Fascinating. Asks, a lot of people seem to want Kim Iverson to join. Again, not clear on why you need to add the show that was a 4th-rate replacement for your show. All right, that is a little bit funny because it is true that when Crystal and Sagar left the Hill and they initially had Ryan and Emily filling in for them, it did very much so seem like a 4th-rate replacement for their show. I think they've both developed their talents as commentators since then, but that's still pretty funny, I think.
Oh, yeah, especially given the fact that there other group of people that were going up against them, I'm pretty sure we may have actively had a hand in getting fucking ousted from the Hill. One of our most watch videos to date was, I swear, I don't know. Gavin and I were on some bullshit last summer. We were like unhinged in our like fucking savage ridicule of these people. I watch it sometimes and I'm like, oh man, I was so fucking mean to that guy, but it was hilarious. So I don't regret it at all. But we just savagely destroyed this, guy that I can't even remember his name. All I remember is we called him Roger Federer the entire video, and the one lady that looked like a Marjorie Taylor Greene kind of deal.
Yeah, that was truly crazy. Some more reactions. Establishment points. Oh, here's a Jimmy Dore fan. Fake leftist gaslighting TYT alternative so we can get our shit lib controlled opposition propaganda. Jesus Christ, man. Did you really need to make it that wordy? Jesus fucking Christ, bro. It's like every Jimmy Dore fucking cliche in the book. But anyway, yeah, a lot of that, obviously, predictably. Here's progressive Michigander. If I was a premium sub to Breaking Points, I'd be upset to see my money used on this. Ryan Grimm, while doing good journalism, has repeatedly shown himself willing to do PR for the squad rather than challenging them. Emily Jasinski seems like an establishment Republican. And he's probably referring to like force the vote. And obviously I didn't agree with Ryan. We basically debated him at the time about that. So, fair enough.
The one thing I will say, though, guys, if you're going to give honest criticism of this, and you have every right to say, oh, I disagree with him on force the vote and all this stuff, it is such a leap to say that he is an establishment Democrat that it makes your guys' argument seem so unserious. Because if you listen to what establishment Democrats have to say and you compare that to what Ryan Grimm has to say, it's really, it is a fucking leap. To just kind of lump them together. I actually think it's self-defeating as a progressive movement. Like I said, we massively disagree with Ryan. I'm not saying that you can't be upset that your money is being used to see this, but when the framing gets blurred to the fact that it's like this is mainstream content, I'm like, I feel like that's a little bit uncharitable, guys. Like mainstream media wasn't telling everybody to vote for Bernie Sanders and that we need healthcare and that we've got a united movement of people and all these kinds of things. So, just to be fair to Ryan, because we have critiqued him a lot.
Oh yeah. Again, I mean, I like Ryan myself, so nothing against the guy at all. But yeah, let's look at some more reactions. Again, a lot of people bitching about Ryan Grimm, predictably. The People's Party trying to out shit lib TYT, predictable again. Yeah, dude, it's their account is so fucking pathetic. Yeah, lots of Jimmy Dore fans coming out of the woodwork. Hey, there's my tweet. Again, Hill must be seething. I think that's true, Anyway, lots of reactions, obviously a lot of predictable stuff, but some interesting opinions as well. I wanted to also quickly take a look over here. Ryan Grimm himself took to Twitter to announce his new deal. He says it's been super fun and also a real education to have done Rising for the last year. But Emily Jasinski and I are headed over to join Crystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty for a new show called Counterpoints. And he goes on to say, I'll miss working regularly with the Rising crew and production staff, but we'll be doing the show for the next 2 weeks and also coming back as guests or guest hosts whenever needed. The Breaking Points audience made this possible, yada, yada, yada. So I do think it's interesting that it does seem like, he says they'll be coming back to do the show as guest hosts whenever needed, but it does seem like they're done doing their Rising Fridays and it's going to be replaced with Counterpoints on Breaking Point. So for the last couple months or so, they've been doing a weekly show on Rising called Rising Fridays that's co-hosted by Ryan and Emily. And it basically seems like that will no longer be the case. So they really, truly did get poached. I think that's like the biggest, part of the story. It's like, no, they actually essentially left the Hill for Breaking Points. So that means that they must be getting paid decently by Breaking Points, because I'm sure they were getting paid decently by the Hill. Either way, I definitely think it's pretty impressive that they were able to poach these two.
Oh yeah, massively impressive. And look, I mean, I imagine it's just a way better opportunity to work with Crystal and Sagar as your, boss or whatever than the fucking executives over at the Hill. Like, I mean, even if they're really nice people, like anybody that's ever worked in a more corporate, rigid environment, will tell you that that's all horseshit. You're gonna have to deal with all kinds of, bullshit behind the scenes. Even at places like RT, we've heard about how behind the scenes there was all kinds of like crazy shit going on that were just like HR problems, not even like election interference, just like day-to-day monotony kind of shit. So I imagine going to a smaller staff where it's much more streamlined, like Ryan has something he wants to say to Crystal, I can say that, you know what I mean, kind of a deal. I imagine that's way nicer. I personally would prefer that. 100%. So yeah, I don't know. I'll be interested to see how this takes off, how they incorporate it. And yeah, I think it would be, like you said, a good idea for them if they're going to be in the studio to kind of make some roundtable conversation topics or content rather, because that was one of the strongest things I thought that they had on Rising was when it was all in studio, and even people that I didn't really like. I'm trying to think of everybody's name. They had a bunch of like really hardcore regulars on there, and they would always be around in the table and chatting, and I thought it was really good discourse, and they had it timed down to where you would do like 5 or 6 minutes on a topic. So
totally agree. I hope they do more panels going forward. Like I said, I'd be more interested, honestly, in just seeing Emily and Ryan join Crystal and Sagar on panels rather than do their own show. But I don't think it's a bad thing either that they do have their own show. Like I said, I'm sure it'll produce some decent content. And yeah, it is true, by the way, that Emily's takes on stuff like abortion are absolutely terrible. I was, listening to her debating Ryan about that last night, and she's like 100% anti-abortion. So yeah, definitely some highly cringe takes, especially from Emily. At least I guess Ryan will be there to push back.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely, I think it's actually good to see people debate that kind of ideology, right? Like, this will be the exact kind of content that we said we weren't getting just the other day from TYT, that homogeny, right? Instead, you'll get to see Ryan be like, no, this is why you're kind of a crazy person for thinking a 10-year-old should have a fucking child and not get like a fucking simple medical procedure that would make her life infinitely easier from that point forward.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, guys, sit tight if you're just tuning in. We're going to make our big announcement about the debate we're doing tomorrow at the end of the show. So make sure to stick around for that. Coming soon. Big announcement, all that stuff. So sit tight. But yeah, let's take a quick listen here to the clip that Ryan posted on Twitter just to get a little bit more context on this, new development over at Breaking Points.
Very exciting news. We are adding a new show to the Breaking Points channel. It is called Counterpoints with great friends Ryan Grimm and Emily Jashinsky. Go ahead and put it up there.
Boom! Look at that graphic. We love
Beautiful.
our graphics team over here at
There's some
Breaking
good-looking
Points.
people right there.
They are fantastic looking people. It's going to be every Friday here. It's going to start on September 16th. It's going to be their own show, their own little modified version of the set, podcast feel. I think you guys are really, really going to enjoy it. As we said, we were going to announce this after Labor Day. However, somebody won't say where, leaked it to the press that this was going to happen. And so through our negotiations, Crystal, with this reporter, we are announcing it here today because he's going to report it later.
I mean, it's a little bit flattering.
It is slightly flattering, I guess.
That there's that much interest in it.
Yeah.
And, obviously they've been hosting together over at The Hill on Rising. They've been doing a Friday show together, which, I think they've had a really great dynamic. Mm-hmm. And I like the combo of the two of them. Obviously, Ryan has great sort of like first, reporting, breaking news that he is going to be able to platform for us all the time. Emily is a wonderful sort of commentator in general and cultural commentator and comes from the libertarian right. So they have, it's a left-right dynamic, but a little bit of a different left-right dynamic than we have.
I think it'll fill in some gaps maybe that we have. And
True.
Listen, people have been asking for a Friday show, and we've been wanting to do it. And obviously, it was all a question of scale and money and all that. And so, thanks to everybody who, the premium subscribers, they enabled us to fund fully the thing, the graphics package, the studio, the staff, Emily, Ryan, and all of that. So I just want to say again, thank you guys so much to enable this expansion. And I do think everybody's going to get a lot out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to see what they do with it. We really, really encourage them to make it their own. Yep. Obviously, like Breaking Points we designed it custom to sort of play to our strengths and what we're comfortable with. They're interested in taking a little bit more of having a little bit more of that sort of podcasty laid back feel, but it's going to be delivered to you just the same way that our show is delivered to you on YouTube with the clips is one version. There's also the free audio version. Then of course, for premium subscribers, you will get the entire uncut version in your inbox every Friday.
Yeah.
So Counterpoints. And what's the start date? Remind me.
September 16th. September 16th. It's actually the exact same day as our live show in Atlanta, which is sold out, just for the record. Just so everybody knows that. Thank you all very, very much. Yeah, so, I'm pumped. They're going to do a great job. We've watched them. Obviously, we both brought them in individually at Rising because we're like, hey, I think these people can kind of fill in for us. And they've made something their own. I think it's really cool. And yeah, I'm excited to see how it goes.
So there we have it. There's the announcement again. Pretty cool overall. I can't say that I'm flipping out super excited about the prospect of watching more conversations between Ryan Grimm and Emily Jasinski, but it's It's not the worst show. I'm not excited. I'm just kind of indifferent about it. But I think the big takeaway here is just the fact that the Hill must be absolutely coping and seething, raging, shitting their pants over the fact that now not only their two biggest, commentators, but two more of their other biggest commentators have left them in favor of the Breaking Points network. And it is cool to see them fleshing out the network. I do hope that they continue adding people on board, because the more voices on there, the better it gets, honestly. And again, more of those panel discussions really is what they should go for, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. But it is good to see that, new independent media ventures in this kind of progressive space can, launch themselves and be successful. That's important, especially with the way that the, entire political sphere is kind of unfolding right now. I would like to see, as you kind of mentioned, Gavin, a little more, content that was maybe a little more on the other side of that spectrum, on the other side of their gaps. Like, Crystal and Saga are very much like right here. Emily and Ryan over here, Vanguard a little bit over here. So obviously, selfishly, we'd like to see a little bit more content that's going to be a little more like hardcore, no fucks about it. Let's go get this progressive change that we've all been just clamoring about for a long time. But hopefully that comes down the line, potentially in the form of some new commentators. So yeah,
absolutely. So yeah, definitely some interesting developments. Yeah, definitely some interesting developments for sure. By the way, I do realize we forgot to shout out the patrons at the beginning of our live stream. So a quick shout out to the patron community. Thanks so much for the support, guys. We really appreciate that. If you're interested in joining our patron community, you can hit up the link in the description. It's the best way to join. Great way to support the show, especially with the documentary content we're producing and that will be premiering in the next few days. So super excited about that. Make sure to hit up that link if you want to support the show. But yeah, sorry, we forgot to do that at the beginning of the hour. What do you want to talk about next, Zach?
I guess we can go into the Dark Brandon speech that everybody's been fucking blowing their loads about. If you want to get into that a little bit, interesting little bit of sociology, I think, going on here, right? I think the red light really fucks with people, man. And if you I don't know if we have a clip or something of watching him, this like feeble old man somehow gets the reputation that he's about to fucking rise again as like the new like Adolf Hitler or something, is what the right's trying to fucking portray him as, all because he's got like a red light in the background. I think it's really interesting, but it's true that the image does look very ominous and scary and all those kinds of things. So just I think actually Steve Cox was tweeting about this, as a guy who's a photographer. He was like, this is really interesting for how like a one single photograph can really like set the tone for like what an understanding of an event was, regardless of how that event actually went. So I just thought this was a really interesting like sociological like phenomenon. That's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you guys know that we're some of the biggest critics of Joe Biden out there in online independent left media. But I do have to say, it's been absolutely hilarious watching all these conservatives just completely shitting their pants over this speech. Here's Ben Shapiro. That was the most demagogic, outrageous, divisive speech I have ever seen from an American president. Keep in mind, these are literally the same people that defended Trump. Joe Biden essentially declared all of those who oppose him and his agenda enemies of the republic. Truly shameful. And by the way, that's just patently false. Biden went out of his way to clarify over and over again that he was not talking about every Republican, that he was talking about a small vocal minority of Republicans. So anyone saying this line about how Joe Biden thinks half the country is fascist, that's a complete bullshit argument, total right-wing talking point. Anyway, yeah, here's the photo that, of course, went viral. It is pretty funny to watch him kind of embracing like the dark Brandon stuff. Who knows if that was 100% intentional or not, but that's definitely how it came across. And a lot of people pointed out, too, that, it was red light, but then also blue light, like on either sides of the red light. So it was kind of just like, red and blue, like, the colors of American flag or whatever. But because of a lot of the photos were taken so close up, it looked like it was just red, which made people, say that it was like satanic or whatever, which is absolutely hilarious. Here's a clip from Fox News. The imagery was almost satanic. Let's watch these people freaking out about this. Again, the same people that defended Donald Trump for 4 years.
The imagery there was almost satanic with that blood red lighting and the two Marines behind him. It was just insane. Look, the imagery there was almost satanic with that blood red lighting and the two.
So yeah, again, whatever criticisms you have of Joe Biden, I almost certainly agree with them. Fuck Joe Biden. He's been a terrible president. The fact that he put some red lights behind him while he addressed the people at nighttime, I mean, it's not one of those reasons. Like, of all the things you're gonna expend oxygen on to criticize Joe Biden over, really, it's the aesthetic decisions of his fucking stage presentation that you're gonna worry about. It's just kind of stupid, and also ironically kind of makes him look like more badass than he actually is. Like, all these people posting these photos and talking about how he looks like Darth Vader and stuff. It's like, yeah, dude, like, you're kind of playing into his hands, bro. You're making him look like a badass.
Yeah, I don't understand the optics uproar, right, about all of this. It's like, look, Joe Biden is a bad president. He's done a bunch of lackluster things, mostly fucking stuck his thumb up his ass and hidden in his basement, right, just like he did when he was running for president. And of course, there's a laundry list of things to fucking despise him for everything that he's done as a senator for 30 years before he was VP, watching on the sidelines while Obama did all of the things that he did, and then only to assume power and, play business as usual, all this kind of stuff. Yeah, there's an endless list of reasons to be critical of Joe Biden, but I just think it's so hilarious that like the entire crowd of people who want to tell you that it was just like a bunch of like nonsense hillbillies storming the Capitol and like, like, oh no, that was nothing. Like, why are you keeping your eye off the ball? That was no big deal. But what's the real issue is that this guy gave a speech in front of a bunch of red lights. I'm like, bro, have you ever watched CPAC before? Your entire party gets up in front of a bunch of big red fucking lights and walks out and, celebrates Viktor Orban and, why we need Christian nationalism. Okay. I think that rings a lot more true to fascism than this, photograph. And I think honestly, I've been shocked at people who, are leftists that are like, this is unacceptable. This sends the wrong message and all that. I'm like, please don't buy hook, line, and sinker into every single right-wing critique of Joe Biden. Like, that's essentially what it is. Critique the substance of that speech all you fucking want to, right? I don't give a shit. But this idea that because he stood in front of red lights, that makes him dangerous. Like, this is the left playing ourselves. It's just falling for one of those like super low hanging fruit criticisms of Joe Biden that the right wants to employ because it'll gin up a bunch of money for their candidates. That's the whole idea, right? Keeps people like, I mean, how fucking like how silly is it that they're actually out here being able to successfully be like, this is satanic, this like, all this kind of stuff. And then on the flip side, of course, you have all the right wingers that are trying to like, compare him to Hitler, and then they get all of the, Nosbald boys from the Trump brigade being like, well, Hitler actually did some good things, kind of deal. But yes, it's just hilarious. This feeble old man, he gets up there, he has no choice about the lighting there. I guarantee you he has no fucking clue. His staff is trying desperately to make him look based so that he can, have some support throughout the midterms and, seal the deal, if you will. I just think that this is like a hilarious thing to criticize the guy for.
Yeah. Also, yeah, Trump did refuse to concede an election, something that's never been done before in American history by a U.S. president. Like, do you really expect his successor to not talk about that, to not bring that up? Like, obviously, you don't think if Obama had tried to stay in power after his term was up in 2016, you don't think Trump ever would have talked about that or made a speech about how that was fascist and dangerous? And obviously, come on. So all this fucking pearl clutching is what really annoys me. It's like, if you don't want Trump to talk about the danger to democracy that the Republicans represent, that you should be mad at the Republicans for fucking the way they conducted themselves, specifically Donald Trump and his cronies, in the wake of the 2020 election. Like, obviously, any side's going to use that to their advantage if their opponents, conduct themselves in that way. That's the most obvious shit ever. Like, come on. But yeah, I did think it was pretty funny. Again, there's so many valid reasons to criticize Joe Biden. Here, let me throw one up on screen right now. This is from friend of the show, Jordan Sheraton, from the White House official. President Biden will visit Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, where he'll talk about his Safer America plan and the simple basic notion that when it comes to public safety in this nation, the answer isn't to defund the police, it's to fund the police. The president will talk about how he brought together Democrats and Republicans earlier this summer to pass the most significant gun safety law in 30 years. He'll say we must build on that, yada, yada, yada. The president will make it clear that congressional Republicans' extreme MAGA agenda is a threat to the rule of law. He says that you can't propose defunding the FBI or defend the mob that stormed the Capitol and attacked the assault police officers on January 6th. And he will highlight how his plan would invest in 100,000 more cops who will be trained and supervised consistent with standards in the president's executive order to advance effective, accountable community policing that builds public trust and strengthens public safety. So if you want to criticize Biden for being like a fascist or whatever, talk about this. Talk about how he's pro-police and how he's going to funnel shit tons of taxpayer money into police departments, which will ultimately make people less safe overall. That's a valid criticism. What's not a valid criticism is, I'm scared of red lights. Like, how much of a fucking loser do you have to be?
Yeah, pretty crazy. I think you're misunderstanding this though, Gavin. Didn't you see this is actually going to be community policing? See, this is actually progressive legislation from the Biden administration. No, obviously this is horseshit. And yeah, there's a litany of genuinely good things to criticize this man about because he does bad things and almost no good things, right? I don't know if we've talked about the fact that there's a good chance that even his student loan cancellation is going to get shot down in the fucking court system, and they could have done it in a way that was much more legally sound, but they chose not to. And I imagine in the coming weeks there will be more speculation about whether or not that was intentional as a way of being like, oh, see, I guess we can't do it without Congress. Who fucking knows? So all kinds of horseshit to criticize Joe Biden for. Obviously, he's continued the business as usual when it comes to the military-industrial complex. Even though he got out of Afghanistan, we're still starving that entire country by holding up all of its finances and resources. Basically locking them out of world trade on top of what we're doing in a bunch of other fucking countries. So, yeah, the fact that he stood in front of a red light and gave a crappy speech ain't the top of my fucking agenda.
Yeah, I think it's pretty goddamn hilarious. And we got to spotlight our good friends over at Occupy Democrats. Breaking, MAGA Republicans are melting down over Joe Biden's historic anti-Trumper speech and are falsely claiming he threatened Americans with military force. This photo of Biden has them absolutely terrified. Retweet if you think the dark Brendan looks badass. So yeah, there's the other side of the fucking crazy partisanship, but it is pretty funny. I have to admit, this whole situation I find to be absolutely hilarious. Just watch again. If you're someone that hated Donald Trump and all of the norms that he broke and all of the, rules that he disregarded and all that stuff. If you're one of those people and you say like, oh, this seemed a little bit too extreme or something. Okay, well, at least you're consistent. But if you're one of these Republicans that defended all of the norms and guardrails that Trump disregarded and all of the crazy literal like dictatorial shit that he did and said and stood for, and then you're going to turn around and clutch your pearls over this shit. That's what I really find to just be completely disingenuous. This whole thing is totally ginned up over, oh, he's blood red satanic lighting. Chill the fuck out, dude. Like it's literally, it's nothing. Like if you actually watch the speech, it's not like this photo, like the energy that this photo gives off right here is not even the energy that Biden's giving off in the speech. Like, go watch the speech. It's just a Joe Biden speech. Like, sure, he maybe seems like he had a bit more Adderall or caffeine before he started, but it's not like he sounds like Hitler or something. Like, he's literally just giving a Joe Biden speech in traditional Joe Biden cadence. There just happens to be red lighting behind him. So, yeah, I think it's all terribly ginned up and pretty hilarious.
Yeah, but the jokes write themselves. When you look at that image, it's like me when mom says we're all out of pizza rolls. Bam, right there. Fucking, you know what I mean? Like, oh man, dark Brandon. Yeah, look, I just think this is hilarious. And this is honestly, it's a perfect example of how we don't have good discussions in this country, right? There's a perfect opportunity to talk about the substance of what's happening and what's going on with, dark Brandon's speech. But instead, you have a couple different groups, right? You have the right that's collectively losing their goddamn mind over this completely innocuous kind of speech that was, I get it, knocking their guy who tried to not fucking give up the presidency and pretend that the election was staged, and still tweets about how there should be a new election and that the old election was fake, or not tweets, sorry, truths about that kind of shit, right? So you have them, and then you have the left that's like the fucking Occupy Democrat fools that are over here being like, RT, if you think Dark Brandon looks like a badass, slaying Trump, ass queen, all that kind of shit, right? And then for some reason, instead of a cohesive fucking message from the actual legitimate left that's like, here's why Joe Biden's upcoming legislation's a problem, like LOL, Dark Brandon jokes are funny, we all like that, but the reality is that he is not Dark Brandon, he's not based, he is like doing all this fucked up shit. But instead, there's just this certain like segment of the left, and they just live to validate right-wing fucking media criticism. That's their whole fucking life, is being like, the Republicans are really right about this media criticism of Joe Biden. And it's like, why? Like, did you put any brain power into thinking about this, or did you just see one tweet from somebody you like and you're like, this is fucking just terrifying and wrong? It's like, no, it's really not. Like, what's terrifying and wrong is everything the president actually does, okay? Not what fucking lighting is in the background as he's giving a fucking speech. Like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Right? And it's so strange.
Yeah, and we're going to take a listen to a few minutes of the actual speech here in a second. But thank you so much, Hysteric Raider, for the $5. Really appreciate that, Hysteric Raider. What a lame speech. I was waiting for him to announce the first galactic empire. Yeah, then he would become Darth Brandon, pull out his red lightsaber. Yeah, then I would actually become a Dark Brandon acolyte.
Oh, well, yeah. A shout out to you, Hysteric Raider, for the first super chat of the live stream. Based as hell, yeah. The speech is lame, but we'll get to show everybody that for ourselves. And David Pacman, LOL. I can't believe it's really you, David. Wow. I mean, hey, I'm all for self-deprecating humor. Keep your chin up, Kai.
Yeah, I can't believe David Pacman's in our chat. What a historic moment. Anyway, what's up, David? No, obviously it's not actually the David Pacman, but thank you for the super chat regardless, imposter. Yeah, let's take a couple minutes of this, insane dictatorial Hitlerian speech in to see just how crazed it actually was. Again, this is like the one thing too that Joe Biden's not even wrong about. Like he's really not wrong. Like, Trump and the MAGA Republicans did literally try to subvert the results of an election. Like, you think whatever you want about Biden. Can you mute yourself? Oh, sorry. I fucking hate the guy. He's true. He's right about this. Like, I'm sorry, but he is. Anyway, let's take a listen here. And we can see again just how Hitlerian Biden's speech was. Here we go.
We must be honest with each other and with ourselves. Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. Now, I want to be very clear up front. Not every Republican, not even the majority of Republicans, are MAGA Republicans. Not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology. I know, because I've been able to work with these mainstream Republicans. But there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country. We must be honest.
Yeah. So again, like show me the lie, like, do you think that was inaccurate?
I mean, the only thing that I would say is inaccurate about this is that he's underplaying the role that in the stronghold that the fucking, Donald Trump has on the Republican Party, right? I think a lot of the fucking Republican Party knows that the base of their voters does fucking want this shit, at least to some capacity. That's why they're always fucking trying to signal to him. And when they don't, oftentimes they get punished for it. And obviously I think his like firm hold on the party is dwindling, right? But yeah, the only thing that I would say about this fucking entire clip is the fact that it's like, yeah, Joe Biden, I don't want you working with the Republicans at all. I want you fucking doing a Democrat agenda and not trying to reach across the aisle and do a bunch of like crony Republican bullshit. But that's the kind of criticisms that we've always made of Joe Biden. Like, this isn't some like, fascist fucking new thing. Any president is going to talk shit on their fucking opponent or their former opponent. Listen to Donald Trump when he was in his presidency talking about Hillary Clinton, right? I mean, Jesus Christ. It wasn't like he was out here fucking being warm towards her. And that was that's to be expected. That's what politicians do. They've like half signal to unity, and then they half slander their opponents up there, and that's how they consider themselves to be the bigger person, right? That's what they do. So yeah, it just, I don't know. Not the public response to this speech has just been kind of like head scratching to me. It's like, obviously there are all kinds of problems that you can pick out with this speech I just did, but I mean, it's pretty par for the course for what you get from a president.
Yeah, I really think it's hilarious how people are melting down over this. My only issue is, yeah, what you said, he should have been even more critical of the Republicans and not just the MAGA Republicans, but this distinction he makes between like, oh, the normal, tame Republicans and the MAGA Republicans. Yeah, there's less distinction than, he's leading you to believe. The normie Republicans are also fascists, right? And the only other issue I have with all this is that he's accurately pointing out, all of this, the threat that Donald Trump represents to our democracy and all that kind of stuff. He's accurately pointing all that out. But like, if that's true, then why aren't you acting accordingly? Why aren't you treating him as if he actually is a threat? And what I mean by that is, why hasn't he been fucking arrested yet? Like, send the feds and fucking throw him in jail. That's my opinion. And if you're going to do all this pomp and circumstance and political theater, then you have to back it up with action, in my opinion. Because if you're going to say this man is a threat to our democracy and he's a fascist and all this stuff, then treat him like one. Fucking deal with the problem.
Yep, that just is gonna, yeah, it'll open up a huge can of worms for them that I'm welcoming. I'm not fucking I think you should open up the can of worms. You'd have to. Then we actually may start to see the wheels of fucking justice start turning and actually holding our elected officials accountable, right? Because as soon as you hold Donald Trump accountable, there's going to be a bunch of people that want to hold our other elected officials accountable, and I think that that's the reasonable thing to do for everyone, right? We were talking about this morning. There's been this like weird like get out of jail free card for politicians who decide to run for higher office, or people who do a bunch of shady shit, but they're constantly like running for president or whatever. I mean, the same shit with the Clintons, right? Like, this isn't a partisan deal. Like, if Hillary Clinton hadn't been running for fucking president, hadn't been the former first lady and all these different stuff, she probably would have gotten in serious fucking trouble for the email scandal. Like, that's just the reality. But because we have this like fucking immunity or impunity rather for people who decide to run for president, Hillary got off scot-free. I'm saying let's go back and let's fucking hammer all these people for their crimes that they've done. We're not like selectively trying to chase Donald Trump. I want all of these people to be held to be punished for the fucking crimes that they've committed, just like we're all punished for the crimes that we commit, even though we're just, we're regular people, so we don't run for fucking president and get to do whatever we want.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I thought this was just about the single dumbest thing to get upset about from Biden's presidency thus far. Again, among all the valid criticisms to be made. Obviously, you don't think Biden's going to talk about this stuff? You don't think Biden's going to talk about the fact that Trump literally tried to stay in power and steal an election? What the fuck? You don't think that's going to come up? How is that off the table? Like, you don't think Trump would have brought that up? Come on, man. Like, don't be ridiculous. But yeah, anyway, that was a pretty fun one. Really enjoyed watching the Twitter discourse surrounding that specific issue. Is there anything else you wanted to chat about in that regard, Zach?
For the most part, I mean, I think that we kind of touched on it. I do think an indictment's coming for Donald Trump here in the future, right? I think we were talking about that a little bit this morning. I had my bet that it would come after September 1st, but I was reading this morning, Bill Barr was on TV basically just systematically kind of debunking all of Donald Trump's points that he was saying. And obviously Bill Barr and Donald Trump are no longer the close allies that they were. But I do still think that it says a lot that, even the insiders, even the former diehard Republicans, and Bill Barr is a fucking crazy person. But if he's like, well, like, this is not looking good. I was also listening to Breaking Points a few days ago, and Sagar was talking about how even some of the like really hardcore anti-Russiagators from the Republican Party have been like, it looks like he broke the law and it looks like he's going to go down for this one. I think it's speculated that they're going to wait until after the midterms to do that indictment, which I think is kind of foolish, because I think he's probably going to announce before then as a way of getting ahead of this indictment, and kind of, as we've speculated, a way of making it look like a witch hunt or like a political fucking persecution, like he's been doing his and honestly the fucking Democrats have screwed themselves, because they went down the Russiagate rabbit hole for a while, and he was able to make himself look really successfully like a victim during that, and like it was all a hoax, and oh, look at all the money they spent and all that kind of shit, and they still couldn't find anything. So I think he's going to have an effective pushback for his base for sure, even though it's apples and oranges. In this case, he really did break the law, and with Russiagate there was no evidence that he did so. So yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see how that all unfolds. I think he's in a hot seat, and I think that as a result, kind of like we were saying, he'll keep himself in the public eye, in the safety of plain sight.
Absolutely. And thanks for the super chat, by the way, AJF Milan. Really appreciate that. For the $5. True justice would be for every current elected Democrat be primaried out, because many of them have the gall to campaign for abortion and are likely the very same incumbents who were politically lazy for 30 plus years on not legislating into law that very right. That includes the Clintons and Obama. 100% AJF Milan. I'm obviously 100% in favor of just about every single current elected Democrat in the federal government being primaried for exactly the reasons you're laying out, man. They lie, they lead people on, and then they gaslight you. That's 100% correct. Obviously, the Republicans do this too with their own issues. But yeah, I'm definitely not in favor of the current corporate Democrat incumbents. You're not going to see me cheerleading those motherfuckers.
No, we played the clip a million times during the after the Dobbs-SCOTUS decision, right? Of Obama, going around telling everybody that this was a fucking, unquestionable women's liberty issue and all that kind of stuff. And then once he's president, he was like, "Oh, this is not a legislative priority," and all that kind of shit, right? So, yeah, that was horse shit. They 100% could have codified it into law. They didn't, because they wanted to continue fundraising off of it. They wanted to always say, "Oh no, the Supreme Court, you have to keep us in charge," so that all this kind of thing. So, yeah, 100% AGF. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, thanks so much for the super chats, AJF. And thank you also, Addy, the bug catcher, for the $5. Always appreciate you, Addy. Can you guys quickly summarize Hillary's The Email scandal? I don't know much about it. Yeah, sorry, we always just, kind of use shorthand to talk about stuff like that, because we don't, want to go down the long explanatory road every time we mention it. But it is understandable that everyone might not be 100% caught up. If you weren't paying attention, or if you weren't living in America in 2016, you might not know what the hell was going on with all that. Basically, Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State under Barack Obama, and she was using a private email server to conduct official, Secretary of State business. And the problem with that is that you're supposed to be using a public server so that you can be held accountable, and that your emails can enter the public records after you're done. The fact that she used a private email server led a lot of people to be suspicious of what exactly she was trying to hide. What kind of communications with foreign governments, for example, do you not want to leak out? Like, what exactly is going on here? Of course, the fact that the Clinton Foundation was receiving donations from, countries around the world and governments did not help that optically whatsoever. And a lot of people think that she was using her, private server email to conduct business with the Clinton Foundation, which a lot of people think was kind of just like a money laundering scheme to, in order to run favors for specific regimes and governments and stuff like that. And I think that's kind of the gist of it. So yeah, she was investigated by the FBI during the 2016 election. Ultimately, she was not indicted, however, because they decided that despite the fact that she committed a crime, there was no intent technically, that it was kind of just an accident. Like, oops, I just unknowingly broke the law. If you're a normal person, ignorance of the law does not mean that you're exempt from the punishments of the law. But if you're a rich person or a super powerful politician, then you can literally just be like, well, I didn't mean to break the law. And they'll let you off the hook, which is exactly what happened to Hillary.
Yep. Fucking insane. Especially because the laws you start breaking when you're like a fucking super high ranking, like Secretary of State, or fucking ambassador. I don't remember what the fuck I don't think she was Secretary of State anymore. But anyway, when you the crimes you're committing are extremely consequential, right? It's not like jaywalking. Okay. But anyway. Yeah, that was essentially what went down. And honestly, one of the early criticisms that people had about Bernie Sanders was that he wasn't willing to go fucking, hey, people have a right to know about this shit. He was always like, nobody cares about these goddamn emails. I'm tired of hearing about these emails. I'm like, oh, Bernie, you're fucking shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, I was like, come on, bro. You should have, come on. That was a missed opportunity. But anyway, thank you, Addy. Happy to explain that. It was definitely interesting. A lot of controversy around that at the time. Thank you also, Christina, for the $9.99. Really appreciate that, Christina. There's nothing that says Hunger Games President Snow like a Joe Biden speech. It was definitely more theatrical than his normal speeches. I'll give you that. There's no denying it. It definitely, they put some more money into that production value, into the budget, all that stuff. There's no denying that.
Yeah, I don't know if this is sarcasm. Like, Joe Biden's speeches are normally like so boring that, there's I don't know. To me, like, yeah, I mean, his actual like speaking was super fucking lame and lackluster, but yeah, the vibe they went through, I guess, really fucking irked people. They tried to make him look empowering, and everybody was like, "This man's a fascist." So yeah, I don't know. That is, I mean, it's funny though. I do kind of get what you're saying.
Yeah, thanks so much, Christina. And also thank you, Zaina Day, for the $5. Really appreciate that. He used this to expand the police state. Let's focus on that. Two parties, same end result. More privatized police force for oligarchic fascism. Well, that there is a valid criticism of the speech. If everyone was out here saying that and pointing that out, Zaina, I would have no problem with the pushback. Again, that's a very valid criticism. What's not a valid criticism is he had scary red lights behind him. That's what I mostly find funny is all these people pearl clutching over like just kind of mundane aesthetic decisions. But you're not wrong, Zaina.
Oh yeah, I think she's kind of reiterating the point that we made, where he's hiring like 100,000 more fucking cops to go wreak havoc all over this fucking country. That is the real like kind of like fucking scary fascist element of what's happening, and it's business as usual. That's actually the least scrutinized aspect of this, right? Which is why it's such a brain fuck. Like, okay, like this is the actual fascist part. Like, let's focus on that. So 100% Zainab.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks a lot for the super chat. We really appreciate that. Also, thank you, Andrew, for the $4.99. Really appreciate that. Just got here, so I don't know what you guys said about breaking points, but to me, it feels like they're becoming CNN light, just like how TYT is MSNBC light. I wouldn't go that far, Andrew. I can understand not being super excited about, the prospect of listening to Ryan Grimm and Emily Jasinski talk. I'm not terribly excited about it. But I do think that I think that's a little bit unfair. The viewpoints that are espoused on breaking points are far, far more populist and outside of the mainstream anti-establishment than anything you're ever going to hear on CNN. That's just a fact. So, would I have preferred if they hired two radicals like Zach and I? Obviously, two commies. Sure, that'd be great. But I don't think it's fair to say that they're CNN light.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a problem for the left as we try and, we're always talking about like big tent politics, right? And for so much of the left, that just means finding like the most racist, anti-Semitic people and like fucking giving them a big hug and trying to build politics with them. But the other side of that, right, the more serious side, I would argue, is taking the people who are still kind of locked into the mainstream media mindset. It's like they're not the most odious fucking people on planet Earth, and that's why they have no other political home besides the left. It's like, no, let's just go for the more rational, thoughtful people, right? So that's what they're doing. They're making a conscious effort to expand the tent of independent media, right? And what do you have to do that? Like, they haven't taken any big corporate fundraising. They're still just as fucking fan funded as the Kyle Kulinski show or the Jimmy Dore show or anything like that. And that is 100% true. You can't take that from them. So that's already different from the differentiating them from TYT. And then on top of all of that, you have this idea that like Ryan is equivalent to like CNN. It really isn't true, right? It would be like saying that Sauger is like a Fox News guy. It's like, I disagree with Sauger all the time, and I disagree with Ryan a fair bit, but they don't really fit those labels. Like, you watch CNN and you don't get a guy that's going to tell you like fucking flat out like Bernie Sanders is the way to go. Like, that was his whole. I'm not now. Obviously, I know. Fuck Bernie Sanders. Okay, whatever. But you're not getting that fucking position on CNN. I don't care how light or it is. You're not getting everybody has a fucking human right to healthcare. Everybody has the right to seek a college education and not be fucking taking out loans for it. It should be free, just like fucking K through 12 is free. We have the resources to do it. Let's do it. These are all things that are not spelled out as like this is the correct solution on CNN. It's like speculated as if it's like a fairy tale kind of a deal. So I think that what they're really trying to do is they're trying to branch out to people who don't want to just hear fucking crazies like us, not that I think our ideas are crazy, but to them, they perceive us that way, right? So you have to slowly bring people into this. It's not for most people going to be an overnight deal where they just find the Jimmy Dore show one day and become a fucking, adopt all of his principles and views. For most people, it's going to be like, oh, I'm starting to see more and more independent media, and then I slowly start to shape my worldview around it. And I think they're very consciously trying to bring in people who might be skeptical of the more independent media, but are going to recognize Ryan Grimm's face from his very credible work that he's done at The Intercept in DC, and Emily Jasinski from, what some would, consider to be, I guess, good work at the Federal.
Yeah, I think that just about sums it up. Thank you also, AV, for the super sticker. Really appreciate that, AV. Thank you so much. And I think we got a couple more super chats. Thank you, Christina. Really appreciate that. Yep, that was sarcasm. I like breaking points, but Ryan and Emily, I mean, yeah, like I said, I'm not terribly excited either about it. It's not who I would have, picked to join, but it's whatever. I mean, Ryan was already part of Breaking Points, really. Like I always like him, being part of a panel or something like that. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not flipping and freaking in excitement myself, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody put it in the chat, yeah, it would have been dope if Abby and Mike Preisner, or Abby Martin and Mike Preisner got shot. So, who knows, right? That would have been maybe a little bit more towards like what our audience is interested in. But again, I just don't think that was their calculation behind the scenes at Breaking Points. But yeah, and shout out to you, Christina. Always love seeing you in the chat.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you so much, Christina. Really appreciate it. And yeah, Abby Martin would be awesome. I love Abby. Hopefully they keep expanding though. I think there's room for all these voices. Like, is Ryan Grimm and Emily Jasinski my personal two favorite commentators? No. But like, do I care that they're going to be a part of this network? No, it's a network. The whole point is to have diversity of opinions. And we were just criticizing TYT the other day for being an echo chamber, the fact that they don't have people on from different portions of the ideological spectrum. So, I actually like that. And obviously also another thing, it's like not all political commentary content has to exist solely to radicalize the masses into revolutionary action. Like sometimes there's value in just listening to two people bounce off of each other who have differing viewpoints, breaking down the current state of affairs. Like there's value in that too. I'll watch all kinds of different streamers all the time, just to get an insight into their perspective, just to kind of, hear the mechanics of their ideology and action. Like sometimes it's valuable and interesting and engaging to listen to conversations, again, even if the point of the conversation isn't to drive the proletariat into revolutionary action or whatever. Like that doesn't have to be every piece of political commentary, but that's a bit of an aside. We do have a special guest that we're about to introduce to the show. Do you want to make our announcement before or after we talk to Terence, Zach?
We can go ahead and chat with Terence for a little bit, and then we can make the announcement at the end. I'm going to run to the bathroom real quick, but I'll be right back.
No problem. Zach's running to the bathroom. And yeah, sit tight, everyone. Sorry to make you keep waiting. But we are going to wait just a little bit longer to make our big announcement about tomorrow's debate. So sit tight. Really excited to chat about that. Really excited to make that announcement. But in the meantime, as our last segment for today's show, we did invite on our friend of the show, Terence Cudney, who's actually an independent candidate for Massachusetts State Senate. Super excited to chat with Terence today. His first time on the Vanguard. We've talked to him a bit on our call-in show that we used to do, but this is the first time on the main channel. So with all that said, welcome to the show, Terence. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going? I'm doing good.
Going well. Just been, chilling, enjoying our Saturday afternoons, talking a little bit. But how are you doing, man? What have you been up to?
Yeah, just hitting the pavement, trying to get out there, get the word out for the campaign. We have our primary here in Massachusetts next Tuesday, so coming, up very quickly here. One of the few boons, I guess I'll say, for running as an independent is that I don't have a primary. So I'm actually all the way through to the general. Oh, hey, Sana, how's it going? So that's one thing I don't have to worry about. It's been a little bit awkward because folks are pretty focused on the primary right now. So to kind of be out there is kind of like, yeah, well, that is happening, but also this is a thing to be thinking about as things go forward. But yeah, it's been great getting out there, getting to meet people, going back out for the second time after gathering the signatures to get on the ballot in the first place. But yeah, it's been a good time.
Hell yeah. Well, do you want to let everyone know a little bit about the district you're running in and also why you decided to run as an independent?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So my district is called the 1st Essex and Middlesex District. We name our districts in Massachusetts by what counties they fall in. So my district is primarily in Essex County, which is on the northeast sort of corner of Massachusetts. And it goes a little bit in one constituency into Middlesex County. We call ourselves the North Shore, part of the North Shore here, for those who have a little bit better sense of the geography out here. But yeah, no, so in terms of the choice to run as an independent, that was a very concerted one for me. The way I always put it is I've always been an independent, since I could be a voter. Even when, so I grew up in Colorado, the sort of Boulder, Denver area of Colorado. It was actually closed primaries back then. They now have open primaries, but I wasn't as much of an engaged voter, to be honest, when I started out. But yeah, so I like to think of myself as someone who's always been an independent voter, because that's what it says on my voter registration. But I also think as I talk to voters, I'm reaffirmed constantly by the frustrations around the duopoly, even in our sort of rural end of Massachusetts. Folks are pretty sick of the lack of progress, the lack of independent thinking, frankly. And what's also pretty interesting about our district is that we've actually elected a quote unquote moderate Republican for 27 years running. 17 years he's run unopposed, my opponent. And so what I take that to mean is, they're looking for a little bit of an opposition in a state that's, very blue. In my side of the legislature, and that the state Senate, there's 37 Democrats to 3 Republicans. And so I'm challenging one of those Republicans. So it's clear that in our district, we want to have some kind of opposition. I just present, as I say to folks on the campaign trail, I present an opposition from the left rather than from the right. And then, hopefully we can get into the issues. And that's what I try and do with voters, is go from there. If they might be, a little hesitant by someone who says they're on the left, I can go from there and get into the issues with them, and hopefully have a nice conversation.
Yeah, you mentioned rural constituents, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, just given the fact that there's probably a little bit of a give and take with the independent, vote right now, right? Obviously, coming off of COVID and all of that, you had a lot of division there, but it does seem based on polling that I've seen, that more independent voters are less happy with the way that Democrats handled that, where on the flip side, independent voters are much more unhappy with the Republican Party for their handling of Dobbs, or the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And I'm just wondering what kind of conversations you're having specifically with those more rural independent voters. What's their reflection like on COVID? Are they focusing more on lockdowns and how that was troubling for them, or the fact that there are no fucking hospitals in the middle of America if you are a rural person and you get sick, and then you have to drive 2.5 hours, then it becomes a big ordeal that uproots your entire life? What are the things that people are saying to you about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I will say, over time, the conversation around COVID has kind of faded, as COVID itself has. I think in general, especially early on when I was gathering signatures and first out there, I had folks that were sort of very concerned about whether or not I had a mask on my arm, or not, that I was ready to put on, even though I was outside, that sort of thing. And you don't want to get in that conversation if you can avoid it, about, hey, it's outside, so I probably can't pass to you, that sort of thing. But we definitely had a lot of folks that relocated out of Boston, that moved out from Boston because of the pandemic. And actually, I moved out, basically a little ways before the pandemic, but it kind of worked out. It's just a lot nicer to be out in the world, in the North Shore on the coast here, without having to worry about, so much congestion and so much potential to be infected. But yeah, I think folks definitely, to be honest, broadly are pretty okay with the response as it's been. And I try to kind of tease out the parts of it that I don't think were as good in terms of, protecting the elderly and protecting the immunocompromised and that sort of thing. I think it's something that we just always tend to forget about. And so I try to kind of open up that conversation if they're willing to have it. But to be honest, you'll see that the conversation has kind of faded. And so it will be really interesting kind of going into the fall, as, people need to start spending more time indoors, how that conversation kind of reemerges, because I think it's pretty inevitable that it will reemerge.
Absolutely. That's a great answer. The only other thing I really wanted to ask you about, Terence, is ranked choice voting, because, as an independent candidate yourself, as anyone that's not running as a Democrat or Republican, obviously the deck is just massively stacked against you guys. Unfortunately, it's one of the ways that the two-party system and the establishment in general disenfranchises alternative options that aren't Republican or Democrat. And recently, we have seen some pretty cool results from ranked choice voting in Alaska. Unfortunately, it didn't lead to a third-party candidate being elected. But I still think that, a lot of people are talking about ranked choice voting because of the results of this Alaska special election, in which Sarah Palin, the candidate that everyone kind of expected was going to win, actually lost. And not entirely because of ranked choice voting, but because of ranked choice voting, she's kind of claiming that it was stolen and trying to muddy the waters and, typical Republican shenanigans, using whatever they can as an excuse for why they lost. As Matthew Ho, who's another good friend of the show, pointed out here, lots of people are talking about RCV after a recent election in Alaska, and certain people are spreading misinformation and myths. Ranked choice voting is simple. You can rank your choices from favorite to least favorite. If your first choice doesn't win, your vote can still count for your second choice or third, fourth, etc. Once a candidate gets a majority of votes, they win. So yeah, this is definitely pretty interesting, and it definitely clears up this issue of spoiler candidates. So I know that they don't have ranked choice voting in Massachusetts, right? But I'm wondering if you, first of all, just have any opinions about ranked choice voting, and also if you have encountered any of this kind of rhetoric about being like a spoiler candidate, or like, why would you waste your vote on an independent candidate, stuff like that. And what's your response to that in a state that doesn't have ranked choice voting?
Yeah, so I mean, I could talk about democracy reform, kind of all day long. Honestly, I mean, it's one of those things. Often when I'm out there, talking to folks, we want to talk about kitchen table issues, but my secret passion is democracy reform and ranked choice voting. You can look on my website; is right there on my platform. In addition to another voting innovation that might be a sort of other option to ranked choice voting, which is star voting. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that one. Okay, great. Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I think it's crucial for, you guys were talking about the Dark Brandon speech earlier. And, the fact is he talks about democracy in that speech a good bit. And the fact is we don't really have a democracy in this country. And so I wrote a little, tweet thread about it. And then that was after I watched the first half of the speech and was just outraged by the way he was kind of misstating the problems of our democracy and sort of saying that it's all about these, MAGA Republicans, whereas, we've basically been a plutocratic oligarchy for, centuries now. And so, innovation is really important in that effort if we really want to call ourselves democracy. And then I watched the other half and basically got angry again and went out and tweeted some more about it. But
you're not a Dark Brandon acolyte, Terence?
Can't say I am, no, unfortunately not. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think the thing is, he talks about, at the end, he talks about our democracy being imperfect. And to me, it's a bit of a cop-out, honestly. But suffice to say that ranked choice voting, I think, could make a real difference. I think you're right to point to, what happened in Alaska. Obviously, that turned the Alaskan at-large district blue for the first time in, I imagine, a quite long time. So that's an interesting development. But yeah, it certainly points to, the ways that popular opinion actually really works. And when you actually implement a system that, allows people to, cast their vote and then sort of their second choice and go through that whole process of, eliminating the least popular candidate until you get a majority, it really reflects voter opinion better. And so I'd very much like to see that in Massachusetts here. There's some, dispute about the degree to which, extremist candidates or candidates in the far left or far right are sort of less likely to triumph for that. And there are people that say that that's better and people that say that that's less good. You'll hear a lot of that from Andrew Yang about with regard to the Forward Party, which I think we could have another conversation about that probably. But I think, I think, we have it it's in Maine. We have, so 2 states away. And so there is, a bit of a case study that we can draw from there in terms of the ways that it's being implemented. And by the way, you can also, I think, train candidates on how to maximize their impact in ranked choice voting. by, for example, saying, well, rank me first, but rank this person second, if you want to actually see, movement in the right direction.
Well, speaking of Andrew Yang, they had ranked choice voting in New York City. He still came in 4th place, but he actually did that where he was like, he teamed up with, I think her name was like Catherine Garcia or something, the sanitation worker, or not worker, but like the New York sanitation head of business, whatever the fuck. And they were like, if you're going to vote for one of us, rank the other one second. Again, that didn't stop Andrew Yang from coming in 4th place, but it is interesting to see how it works like that. It seems like there's more of that coalition building, more positive campaigning where you're not just trying to like shit all over your opponents. You're actually trying to fight for their voters' vote. So a lot of interesting things about ranked choice voting.
Yeah, it's a bummer that I remember, I think a few years ago, it was up for vote in Massachusetts, right? Do you remember how close it got, Terence? Because off the top of my head, I don't remember exactly what the outcome was. I know it failed, which was a fucking bummer. I think it was 2020, right, when they voted on this. But anyway, I just wondered is there much momentum? Is there much of a movement to get that back on the ballot for people to vote on again?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think it was a couple of years ago that it failed, and it failed, I want to say something like 60-40 or something like that. So it was less of a good result than you'd like to see, certainly. But yeah, I think as time goes on and as people hear about it, I think one of the reasons why I advocate for ranked choice voting first and star second is because there is momentum for ranked choice voting. I think, if it was something that we were to run a ballot initiative on again, I would imagine it would be that much closer. So it's just a question about when is the right time to kind of go forward with it. But I've had a lot of enthusiasm when I bring it up on the campaign trail. People are really psyched about the idea of, really getting someone they want, or at least being able to rank who they want first, even if it might seem like that's not going to be the candidate that officially gets into office.
Yeah, it was one of those weird things, because if you frame it like that to people, which, is how a more realistic framework for it, it seems like a no-brainer to like way more than 50% of the population in my experience, right? But they were just able to warp it and prey on people's fears about, manipulating the way that we do elections. It's sacred how we do elections, like, we can't change this. And that older, not to, people always hate it when I talk about an older demographic. There are a lot of base comrades that are older, but I'm going to be honest and tell you that a lot of the people who were more concerned about changing the way we do our elections, incorporating ranked choice voting, the way that the opposition framed it was like, this is a distortion of the way it's always been done. These kinds of things resonate with an older audience much more than they do with the younger audience who's like, fuck it, change it. I don't give a shit about any of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're definitely, you will definitely see the fear mongering around the way that it complicates the process and things like that. But, when you actually look at the way that, the ballots are counted, especially if you do it in a paper ballot, it's pretty easy to make sure that is being done right. And actually, it's interesting. I don't talk about this a lot, but actually my previous work in tech entrepreneurship, my third and final startup, was actually an online secure voting via the blockchain. I bring that up not necessarily because I so much advocate for it now, but because I got a lot of a chance to see kind of the machinations of an election and how that goes. And
that was like all the rage in 2016. I remember like people were big into that in the 2016 election, the blockchain election stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And, I think you could have a reasonable debate around, the way that it opens up and enfranchises people in ways that they might not have been franchised before by doing online voting. But because of the fear mongering around elections and, the concerns there, I'm very sympathetic to the idea that, paper ballots is kind of the way to go, at least in the short to medium term. But yeah, in terms of the administration of elections, I think you see that working in a process like ranked choice voting, it's not as hard as people make it look. It's totally feasible, and I think we need to see it nationwide.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I will say from anecdotal experience, it seems like the biggest issue that ranked choice voting activists face is just explaining it to people that like have never experience that in their lifetimes. Like, like my grandfather, for example, who I have a lot of conversations about with politics, it like breaks his mind when I try to talk about ring choice. He's like, it seems so goddamn confusing. I'm like, I promise it's not that confusing. But again, if you've done something the same way your whole life and all of a sudden everyone's talking about all this crazy, rank the candidates, it's like, wait, what? So yeah, education is definitely important. But I think once people get there and they do understand how it works, they'll be like, oh yeah, that's actually completely 100% the logical way to do it. I think that's how like the Oscars are decided, like the Academy Awards, they do like a ranked choice voting style thing where you rank the films. And it just makes sense. Like it's the more democratic way to do things. But anyway, really appreciate you coming on, Terence. If you have any final words you want to say about your campaign or the policies you're championing, feel free to do so. We had a great time chatting though.
Yeah, I mean, thanks so much for having me on, you guys. I mean, I think when it comes to running in a race in a rural district, sometimes you find you run into some of those problems around the kind of urban rural divide as it matches up with our politics nationally. But I think when you actually talk to people about the real issues, if you talk to them about the need for universal health care like I do, if you talk to them about the need to fight climate change more boldly, if you talk with them about democracy reform, things like ranked choice voting. I actually also talk about establishing a Northeastern Regional Alliance for Democracy and Human Rights. And I see this as a way to kind of get at, I didn't anticipate this, but, getting at the issue of abortion as we're seeing, those rights being taken away around the country. But also, when you see state legislatures trying to disenfranchise people's vote and turn the tide when it's clearly going one way to turn the tide another way, as Trump wanted to do in the 2020 election. And I usually, when I talk about January 6th, I don't talk about the riot, which some on the left really struggle with the focus on that, and I understand that. What I talk to them about is basically after that riot, when they went back into the legislature went back into the chamber, then you had 147 Republicans vote to, decertify the election in 2 states, or 1 or 2 or both states. And that's what really concerned me. And so that's why I talk about.
Yeah, that's a great point. Just to break in real quick. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And my only issue with like the January 6th committee and all that kind of stuff is that I feel like the focus is entirely on the just like the normal people that participated rather than the people in power. Like, obviously fuck the people that stormed the Capitol, but I'm far more interested in seeing consequences for the, actual people in power, people like Donald Trump and all of his cronies that did try to steal an election.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, there's way too much focus on, the kind of scary event that happened, and I watched it live. It was very scary, to kind of watch what happened there. And I don't want to dismiss people's concerns about that, but I think the much bigger concern is the actual threats to whatever part of democracy we have, in this current country that we have today. But again, thank you so much for having me on. Folks can find me on Twitter at Cudney4MA. My website's Cudney4MA.com. And it's really great to talk to you guys in person finally.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah. Thanks for coming on. Have a great one.
You guys too.
Yeah, thanks so much, Terence. Best of luck in the election, and looking forward to seeing how the results of that shake out. But yeah, great time talking. Appreciate you dropping by.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Terence. That was great. Really enjoyed speaking to Terence. He's a great candidate. And, we always love to platform independent candidates, third-party candidates, because obviously they're up against so many deficits when it comes to media attention and the way that voters even, look at their candidacies in the first place. Again, all of this talk of spoilers and wasting your vote. So it's important to take these kind of candidates seriously, because they really are, for the most part, 100% correct on the issues if you compare them to their alternatives in the Republican and Democratic parties. So, super important stuff. Terence is a great guy. Really like his platform and the issues he's fighting for. So definitely, follow him on Twitter and support him if you can, all that good stuff. Looking forward to chatting again at some point. But we do have a few super chats to get to before we make our big announcement. So again, make sure to stick around, everyone, until the very end of the stream when we make our big announcement about the debate that we're going to be doing live on the channel tomorrow. But before that, we do have a couple super chats to quickly address. So we can start with this one from Das Bus Fleisch. Thank you so much for the $1.99. Coming up, the Daily Show on Breaking Points. That was Jon Stewart's, right?
Yeah, that would be hilarious. And I would love if they organized a show that was like political spoof comedy to be on the Breaking Point show. Yeah, that would be, I mean, I think that would be legendary. I think there's a real home for progressive kind of political comedy in that kind of world. But yeah, shout out to you, Das Post.
Yeah, thanks so much. Appreciate that. And they did interview Stewart not too long ago, so who knows? But yeah, thanks so much for the super chat. Thank you also AJF Milan for the $10. I give a side eye suspicion on Breaking Points. They barely say anti-war stuff, and with the latest edition of Folks, I have a theory about them. I gotta disagree. You know, with all due respect, AJF Milan, I think that Crystal and Saga are both like vehemently anti-war. I don't know what specific instances you're talking about, but I've never seen them defend any war ever. They're very critical of the U.S. funding the proxy war in Ukraine. They're very critical of U.S. foreign policy in general. Even for a Republican, Sagar is known for being incredibly critical of our interventionist policy in this country, and is on the record multiple times saying that it's a total waste of taxpayer money. It doesn't accomplish what it's supposed to, and that it's totally and utterly pointless. So I just got to straight up disagree with you on that one, AJF Milan. Thanks for the super chat, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was just like scrolling through all of their like most recent commentary on the war, like Russian profits boom as sanctions backfire on the West. All kinds of stuff critical about the amount of money that the United States is pumping into this. They were massively supportive of the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Occasionally I think that sometimes they do fearmonger about China, but for the most part, they're pretty spot on when it comes to like, they're not like cheerleading any of these wars or the U.S. involvement in them. They're pretty non-interventionist across the board.
Yeah, exactly. They were even against like Finland and Sweden joining NATO. So I don't know how you could possibly call them pro-war. So unfortunately, with all due respect, just got to disagree with you on that one. And you did follow up with another super chat. Thanks so much for the $5. I recall info about them, especially Crystal, having some money backed people from her days of campaigning. Sabby did a segment on it. Check it out. I did watch that, and no problem with Sabby. She's a friend of the show. But I do have to be honest, that article that she did a segment about was a total hit piece. Like that was like 100% a smear job against Breaking Points. Again, nothing against Savvy. I think she's fine. But yeah, that specific article you're referencing was a complete and utter hit piece.
Is it the piece that we both read that one time? Okay, guys, I don't even know how to respond to that. That was one of the dumbest fucking articles I've ever read in my entire life. I can't imagine like that is like if you have absolutely no concept of journalism and you have no concept of what evidence is, and all you've done is listen to YouTubers and podcasters pontificate about bullshit all the time. That's what you think a fucking researched piece of journalism is. It was completely a joke. It was like, this guy did an internship here back 20 years ago, and therefore he's a mouthpiece of this organization. But this one guy that I do like, even though he did get a paycheck from this one organization, he's a free thinker. It was like so selective. It was so like poorly fucking argued that, I mean, it was a fucking joke, guys. Like I don't know what to tell you. That was hysterically laughable piece of journalism. I'm not gonna mince words about that. You can't even call it journalism. It was just fucking smut.
No, it was just as, if not more, lazy than the people that say that Chris Hedges is a Russian asset because he used to work for RT. Like it was that level of bullshit. It maybe even worse.
They
but
literally
anyway.
tried to make David Sirota look like a mouthpiece for AIPAC in that fucking. Are you fucking kidding me? Honestly, that's like, I'd say that's borderline anti-Semitic, but I won't get into that.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far, but still, it was a bad article. It was poorly written. It was a complete and utter hit piece. But anyway, appreciate it anyway. And here's another one. I think Crystal and Saga are doing a more tempered TYT like approach. We need to keep an eye on them, folks. Was it? Oh, I don't think it was. I think the first one was this one.
Oh, damn it. My bad.
Yeah, no problem. But anyway, yeah, thank you again for the super chat, AJF Milan. I honestly think Crystal and Saga are doing a more tempered TYT like approach. We need to keep an eye on them. They don't push back much on wars. Again, they literally do. I've never seen them do a pro-war segment, so I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, again, I just for the most part disagree. Obviously, they're not above criticism at all, but I don't think it's fair to make that specific criticism about them being somehow pro-war, even though they're anti every single war.
Yeah, I mean, if you send me a clip and I hear Sagar saying like, we're gonna go to war over Taiwan, then I will fucking criticize the hell out of it, and I will rake him over the coals and be like, that's a fucking terrible idea, dude. What the hell happened to your analysis of this? But I would need to see that link and not just some crazy ravings on the internet.
Yeah, I think so. Really appreciate the pushback, AJF Milan. We obviously, are not coming down too hard on you, just expressing our disagreement. But thank you anyway. Also, thank you, Addie, once again for the $5. Really appreciate that, Addie. I have a few friends in the North Massachusetts area. I'll definitely share this video with them. Good luck. Well, thank you, Addie. Hopefully they get some value out of that. Hopefully they enjoy that. Really appreciate the super chat. And yeah, thanks so much, Addie, as always.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Really appreciate that. And thank you also, Ramian, for the $10. 2 years after COVID hysteria showed us we will stand for bodily autonomy when the chips are down. The authoritarians outed themselves. A state will force a needle into your arm. I mean, I've been critical of the some of the policies, definitely the lockdowns and stuff. But that being said, I don't think it's fair to say that anyone had a needle forced in their arm. Like, it's not like the fucking government agents that fed the FBI was like knocking down people's doors with jabs in hand. Like, I mean. I don't think that's quite fair to say, Robbie, but I appreciate it anyway.
I mean, Aaron Rodgers never got vaccinated and he's about to play NFL football this year. I mean, nobody, as far as I know, even when like nobody was forced to get nobody was forced to get it. Right. I think that that just didn't happen, right? Like they didn't force a needle in anybody's arm. So maybe if you're talking like hypothetically, like for the people that were in hypothetical like support, because I imagine there was a fucking group of people that were like, yes, we have to fucking force every single individual to get the fucking vaccine. Like if you're talking about that, like a hypothetical, like the people who were clamoring for that, then I would say that, yeah, those people are a little crazy. But I don't recall any instance in the United States where the state was like fucking forcing needles into people's arms. But anyway, thank you so much, Ramian.
Yeah, really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Ramian. And also thank you, Zainaday, once again for the $5. Crystal worked for Ojeda and worked against Polygene with centrist nonsense and corporate money. She's shady, TBH. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Richard Ojeda also a progressive candidate? Like, wasn't he also a progressive, like Bernie Sanders-esque candidate? That's how, I mean, I personally would have voted for Polygene Swearingen, but working for Richard Ojeda is not like working for fucking Chuck Schumer or something. Like, I personally probably would have voted for Polygene Swearingen or worked for her if I had the chance, but I don't think that's like a totally compromising thing either. And I mean, sure, like I'm not saying Crystal Ball's above criticism. Obviously there are legitimate criticisms to be made, but if you have to go back like 5 years and be like, she worked for this candidate that I don't like I just don't think that's like a really legitimate criticism of someone. Like it criticize her current, stance, her current business, her current whatever. But just going back 5 years and be like, she worked for this guy that I don't like. I just don't really agree with that.
Yeah, it would be like me being like, Jimmy worked at TYT. He's untrustworthy. They took that Katzenberg money in 2018. When was his last paycheck cash from fucking TYT, right? As far as I know, I believe he was still there for at least a little bit. You would probably know better than me, Gav.
Oh, he actually defended them even after they started taking that money. Yeah. So 100%. Anyway, thanks for the pushback. Anyway, again, I would have voted for Polygene Swearingen myself. But I don't think that's like somehow a compromising or like disqualifying position either. A lot of people.
Ojeda was big into Bernie.
Yeah, exactly. I think he was endorsed by Bernie the first time he ran. So anyway, who knows? Yeah. Anyway, we can finally move on to our big announcement. We've been teasing it throughout the live stream, and we're super excited to make this announcement because it's been a debate that's a long time coming. We've been wanting to have this conversation for a long time. And again, it's about time we got around to this conversation because the person we will be debating is someone we've had a long history of criticizing on this channel. And we always try to be good faith and all that stuff. But we haven't hid the fact that we have a lot of disagreements with this person. Specifically, the issue that we probably disagree the most on is the issue of internet censorship and social media deplatforming in general. This person has, consistently cheerleaded the internet censorship and social media deplatforming of certain figures that he considers to be problematic or that he, doesn't necessarily think are contributing in a productive or even safe way to the discourse. And I'm looking forward to breaking all of that down with said person tomorrow at 2:00 Central, 3:00 Eastern. And of course, if you guys haven't guessed yet, that person is Mr. Sam Cedar of the Majority Report.
Yep. Been doing a lot of prep for this debate since found out about it. Put on the Bob's Burger movie. Sat down and sang along. I was like, okay, guys, I need all the good graces we can get. You know, sharpen my debate skills. Watch my cousin Vinny. Rocking and rolling.
Yeah, super excited to chat with Sam. You know, I've obviously been a longtime listener of the Majority Report, and the one issue that I've always had massive beef with him is the position he takes on censorship and internet deplatforming. You know, I remember we put out a video at the time when he was on MSNBC advocating for the deplatforming of Joe Rogan, for example. You know, we pushed back at that time. Personally, I just don't think it's a good look for the left. I think optically it's terrible, you know, for us to look like authoritarians and petty, you know, people that want everyone else to only be exposed to the viewpoints that we agree with. So, you know, I'm excited to have this discussion. I really am. I think it'll be a fun one. I think it'll be an interesting exchange of ideas on an issue that is increasingly important. You know, that the internet, social media, it is undeniably the new public square, right? So I think for that reason, it's actually an incredibly important issue for us to kind of refine our approach to and the way we talk about this stuff, because it is important. You know, most people live online these days. All their discourse takes place online. You know, whoever they're listening to, it's all online. So this is like the new battleground of ideas, and I think it's important that we present a pro freedom of speech, pro First Amendment approach as the left. And that's what I'm excited to debate and, you know, get into with Sam, who again has consistently held the opposite viewpoint. So, you know, tune in tomorrow. I think it's going to be a really fun discussion, a really interesting, hopefully productive exchange. Again, make sure to hit that notification bell in case you haven't already, so you won't miss it. We're going live tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern. Really excited to have this discussion. Yeah,
and I'm going to throw a wrench in the whole damn thing and say that I actually would like to be the unique arbiter of what is deemed free speech in this society. So that'll be the nice little contrarian take. Everybody wants to know, like, should it be the oligarchs? Should it be, you know, everybody on their own? I think it should be the Vanguard. So no, I'm kidding. Obviously, I think it'll be a good conversation. I think it'll be fun because, yeah, look, the reality is, right. Gavin and I's position on this has never changed. It's never wavered. Actually, I agree with the old Chomsmeister about this one. You know, he's ironclad when it comes to free speech. We've disagreed with Noam Chomsky. It's not like he's a fucking deity, but the dude's made a lot of great arguments and he's read more books than probably any other living leftist, right? So he's good to, you know, tout for some support. And, you know, he has the great quote where you either support the freedom of speech from the people you hate the most, the people you just hate and find the most like detestable. I mean, this man was like he's fucking Jewish, you know, and he was there saying, yes, technically these fucking disgusting Nazi pieces of shit have the right to fucking protest and demonstrate as long as they're not participating in violence or threat or planning violence, right? You're allowed to demonstrate hateful ideas because the worry is always that, you know, your egalitarian principles will be deemed in an Orwellian society, the hateful rhetoric, right? Like you will be the terrorist activity, right? If you're, you know, just talking about things that are, you know, against the state or whatever, right? And you know, we've all thought, you know, thought policing and all that kind of shit starts coming to mind. And so it's a slippery slope, right? So, and I think it'll be a really good discussion for me and Gavin to navigate a lot of the pushback that somebody like Sam, who, you know, I believe, you know, comes at these positions from a desire to not see harm done to, you know, minority groups, to not see, you know, groups that he, you know, obviously recognizes as like adversely affected by society, be like continue to be like, you know, denigrated and disrespected and, you know, shit that Gavin and I also do not want to see ever and, you know, have massive amounts of disdain for, but we'll still, you know, would rather. That's why we spend so much of our lives talking about all the shit we disagree with, right? Because I think if you're going to fucking make it your principle, hey, you can say whatever the fuck you want, well, then you better spend a good amount of your time talking about all the horse shit ideas that are out there and making sure that you're making a thorough effort to debunk them. But anyway, I think it'll be a good conversation with Sam Cedar. And I hope it goes well.
Yeah, me too. Super, super excited. Like I said, been a long time coming. We've been a very vocal critic of Sam and the Majority Report in general. So, it's about time we made some of these criticisms to the guy's face and actually had what hopefully is a productive exchange. Maybe it'll be even more productive than our last debate. Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see, right? But I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be engaging and entertaining. And this is an issue that I think the left is genuinely split on. Unfortunately, much to my chagrin, I see fellow leftists cheerleading censorship and deplatforming on the internet constantly, more and more so. It's one of the big beefs I have with the modern day left. Again, I'm really hoping we can kind of get to the bottom of this and kind of work out exactly why he takes this position, which I just find to be pretty indefensible, especially from an optical position. But I don't want to spoil all of my arguments. I don't want to spoil all of my arguments in case Sam himself is watching right now. We'll save that for tomorrow. We'll get into all this good stuff and, really, really, really go down the rabbit hole, hopefully. But I'm really excited, right? I think it's going to be a great exchange. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. It's not going to be boring. We promise we'll bring that lively Vanguard energy that you guys know and expect. But yeah,
Kevin's got to rest up his vocal cords in case he has to fucking scream at this fucking guy.
Yep, that's what I'll be doing tonight, drinking some tea with honey, so I'm all ready to scream. No, I'm just kidding. I'm gonna try to take a little bit more of a productive and civil approach this time. We'll see what happens. Obviously, you guys know I like to get passionate and I like to get excited, and sometimes things don't go as planned. But we're gonna try to make sure it's productive. We're gonna try to present our case in the best possible light, and we hope you guys are there to support us. To hit that like button, tune in, all that stuff. Cheer for us from the bleachers, so to speak. But yeah, really excited about it. Again, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss the clash of the century happening tomorrow on the Vanguard. Two titans finally meet.
Yeah, exactly. And Gavin, two titans. I'm kidding. No, yeah, it's gonna be an awesome show tomorrow. I can't wait. It's gonna be a lively debate like they always are, and I think you guys are gonna really enjoy it. It's fertile ground to dive into.
Absolutely. So that just about wraps up our live stream for today. We did get a couple more super chats, so we're going to quickly react to those before we get on out of here. Thank you so much once again, AJF Milan. No problem. I'll bring receipts then, guys. Send us anything you want, AJF Milan. Again, feel free to send us any info you have. I'll definitely take a look at it.
Yeah, I would love, like I said, if there's a video of like Sagar being like, I want to bomb the shit out of this country, like I'm ready to see it. Like I want to see it. I want to make content about that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, AJF Milan. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Kelly. Hey lads, I'm curious, what's the craziest stuff you've seen / heard at a protest? These right wingers are getting wilder by the day. Straight pride, LOL. Yeah, the straight pride thing's been going on for a while. Isn't that like Jesse Lee Peterson, noted gay man, his whole project? Yeah, so no, that's true. We don't really attend much right-wing protests, so I don't really have a lot of stories to tell about crazy right-wingers at protests, but I've been to a lot of left-wing protests, a lot of anti-police brutality protests and stuff like that. And the craziest thing I've seen is police officers fucking tear gassing American citizens for expressing their First Amendment rights. That's by far the craziest thing. A military worth of cops fucking standing in the plaza, the J.C. Nichols Plaza at Kansas City. A fucking literal military of police officers tear gassing the fuck out of innocent people for expressing their First Amendment rights to protest. So that would definitely be the craziest thing I've seen. But what about you, Zach?
I mean, yeah, obviously we saw a bunch of fucked up shit during the George Floyd protests. Saw like teenage girls get sprayed with fucking, mace and all that kind of fucking shit. So I saw people setting cars on fire, which, I thought was kind of base, to be honest. We got the point across, but there was also a lot of brutality from the police. Yeah. So I've seen wild shit. You got to make wild shit to fucking, make a point sometimes, right? Like they fucking set the police station on fire in Minneapolis. Like, you know what I mean? Like I wasn't here to criticize that.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Kelly, though. Really appreciate it. And let us know what the craziest stuff you've seen or heard at a protest is. Would definitely be interested in hearing your opinion as well. And yeah, I promise I'll lay off the sativa. before the debate tomorrow. I promise you, Ramian. Appreciate that. And thank you also, Addy, for the $5. I obviously agree with you guys on censorship, but Sam's a good debater. Good luck. Yeah, I mean, no doubt about that. The guy is a good debater. He has those rhetorical chops. He has a lot more experience debating than us. So, like I said, we're hoping it goes well. You're going to have to tune in to find out if it does.
Yep, absolutely. I think it's going to be fun. I think it'll be lively and fun. Sam seems like a really personable guy, so I don't imagine that it's going to be like a huge fucking problem. I'm excited to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much, Addy. Really appreciate that. And I think that's just about it for today's live stream, Zach, unless you had anything else you wanted to mention or talk about or close the show on.
I mean, not really. I thought we had a great, lively show today. Shout out to Terence for coming on and talking a little bit about his campaign. Obviously, it's a fucking massive uphill battle to run independent in any district, but it's a necessary burden. Somebody has to take it on. So shout out to him for doing that heavy lifting. Be interested to have him back on and just talk a little bit more about blockchain and get, as a leftist and somebody that clearly knows a little bit more about it than me. I would love to field him my pushback and then see hey, what the fuck do you think about this as somebody who has my same politics but also a little bit more knowledge about this than me. So I thought that was really interesting. Shout out to Terence about that. But yeah, thanks everybody that tuned in. Hit that notification bell for tomorrow, 2 p.m. Central. You guys aren't going to want to miss it. And I guess all we have left is the shout out to our patrons, which will make extra special this time because it was about 20 minutes late earlier because we both forgot. But yeah, shout out to all you Vanguardians, Super Vanguardians, comrades. You're all comrades to us. You make the wheels on our van go round. Coming up, we've got even more fucking content for you guys coming. Got that Vanguard documentary content coming down the pipeline, coming down the road for you guys. It's coming up. We've got a lot of really good stuff, even more ideas coming. It's going to be great. Super excited to share it all with you. But yeah, take it away, Gavin.
Yeah, huge shout out to the patrons. Links in the description. You guys know the drill. Hit that up if you're a fan of the show. If you enjoy the content we create, we'd really appreciate that. Obviously, we're 100% viewer funded, 100% independent. We don't, take money to read off bullshit ads from, scam companies. So we really appreciate the support, guys. It really makes the show possible. So thank you so much. We really appreciate that. And the link is in the description. As always, you guys know what's up. So thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And as Zach said, we got documentary content coming down the pipeline in the near future. Probably dropping in the next few days. We want to debate Sam tomorrow and give that a couple days to kind of soak up some views and attention and all that stuff, hopefully. But probably sometime in the next week, probably like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at the latest, we're going to be dropping our first Van documentary. And that one, of course, is about Jesse Ventura and how he smashed the duopoly for the governor's mansion in Minnesota. So we're super excited to premiere that. We think you guys are going to be really into it. I'm so excited. It's been so much fun to edit. So yeah, really excited about that. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already so you don't miss all the good upcoming stuff from the debates to the documentaries to just Zach and I talking shit. But that does conclude our live stream. So hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Shout out to the hate watchers. And we'll see you tomorrow debating Sam Cedar. Hope you guys tune in for that.
Yeah, peace out, guys.